Okay, Moon River, jazz chords. So they're actually called jazz chords. They tend to be called jazz chords because they're more complex chords that mainly get used in jazz. So of course they get used everywhere. They get used in classical music. I shouldn't say everywhere. Very rarely in country. Simple forms of music where you really want to hear just the basic. Simple major and minor chords. So in a simple form of music like country, you won't get these more extended chords. But in most other forms of music, you will. You certainly will in pop now, progressive rock, definitely. Like I said, classical. But they've maintained this name of jazz chords. But all it means is that they're more complex chords. So what do I mean by that? Or what is meant by that? Well, that first chord is, let me just see that I'm in shot. Yes, I'm in shot. So that first chord is C major 7. Well, C, just a simple C, C major, is this shape, isn't it? And even though we've got 5 notes, 5 strings, 5 notes on 5 strings, letter-wise, we're repeating just 3 notes. We've got C, E, and G, and then C and E again. So that's just 3, C, E, and G, with C and E repeated, but in a higher octave. To play C major 7, I have to add a note. Now on a piano, it's obvious. You're playing 3 notes, C, E, and G, and then you miss a note on the keyboard, and then you play the next note, stacked thirds, and then you get C, E, G, and B. So now you've got a 4-note chord rather than a 3-note chord. So C major, just a simple C major, is a 3-note chord of C, E, and G. C major 7, so that would be C, E, and G. This is why it's difficult on a guitar. And then C major 7 would be C, E, and G, and adding B to it. And you can hear it's a different sound. And it's a more complex chord, it's a more complex sound because you've got 4 notes interacting with each other rather than 3. So that's what was my point in saying all this. That's what I mean. That's what's meant by complex chords. You're adding more and more notes, usually in stacked thirds, which is play a note, miss a note, play a note, miss a note, play a note from the scale that you're in, okay, or that the chord is in. So, our first chord here is C major 7. Now, I think you know that on a guitar you can go, there's C major, and there's C major 7. Why? Because when I take that first finger away, instead of playing the note C again, I've now added the note B. Yeah, so it's become this more complex chord. But on a guitar, you have to, because you've only got 6 strings, you have to choose which notes you're going to play to emphasize the flavor of this new chord. So it actually, even though it's a more complex chord, turns out to be more simple to play, at least in this position. Of course, I could also play C major 7, like this, or like this. Now for this song, I'm not going to go up here, but I might play it here. But I think you want to avoid bar chords, but just in case you don't, although generally I will, okay, because we've done bar chords before, and they don't sound great on acoustic anyway. But just to let you know, just for this one chord, you bar the 5th fret, 5 strings at the 5th fret, because we don't need this low E string. So first finger on the 5th fret, barring those 5, and then 3rd finger goes, did I say 5th fret? 3rd fret. Then 5th fret with your 3rd finger on the D string, 4th fret on the G string with your 2nd finger, and 5th fret on the B string with your little finger. So this is C major 7, and this is C major 7. All the same notes, but in a different order. Yeah, so they're called different voicings of the same chord. So let's go for it. So here's C major 7. It's that note. That's why I can't get it. Moon, moon, river. And when I go to A minor 7, well, we've done A minor 7. Then sorry, F7 sharp 11. What is it? Wider than. So what's happening here? What I'd like you to do is do just a normal F. Yeah, so that's bar, first fret, and you know an F, right? So second finger, second fret of the G string, fingers 3 and 4, third fret of the A and D string. Now that is a simple F chord. But if instead of barring with the first finger, you only fret the first string. Let me see if I'm getting that. And instead of barring all the strings, you do this. So I'm just fretting that low E string, and I'm leaving the other strings open. Yeah. So I've got the B string and the top E string ringing out. That gives me F. Well, actually I shouldn't have that E string ringing out because that gives me something else. But if I just have the B string ringing out, so if I just strum to the B string, so I've got these typical 4 notes for F. I mean, one's repeated, that's F and that's F. But so far that's just a simple F chord. Add that note and I've got the sharp 11. Yeah? Now, if I wanted to do F7 sharp 11 to make sure that you really get the flavour of dominant 7, I'd have to do this, which as you see is I'd have to take my little finger away from the D string, just as you do when you go from a major chord to a dominant 7 chord in this bar chord shape. But at least I don't have to bar all of them again. I can just bar those lowest 3 strings with my first finger, but that involves doing that shape with the first finger. Yeah? Why does it involve doing that? Because I don't want that B string muted. I want it ringing out because that is the one that gives me my sharp 11. So this is the sound of F7 sharp 11. Lovely. I don't know if it's what you want here. And this is the sound of F sharp, add sharp 11. I prefer this sound for this song, but it's up to you. Now, what is a sharp 11? Well, when you play a major scale, why play a major scale? Because everything in theory is related to the major scale. So I'm in an F chord. An F chord, an F major chord, comes from the scale of F major. Yes, it can be found in other scales as well, but at the moment we're just thinking of the isolated chord. And when you think of the isolated chord, you just think of the scale, the major scale, from the root of the chord. Okay? So this is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, the major scale. And of course you can say do, re, mi, or you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and people do. That's where you get these numbers from, like 7, flat 7, major 7. That's where they're all coming from, these numbers, C6 at the end of the piece, etc. They're telling you the number of the note in the scale that the chord is in. Yeah. So this is F, like I said. If we're just thinking of a chord in isolation, as we are when we're looking at what type of chord it is, how complex or simple it is. So we've got F. Now let's forget about the dominant 7 part at the moment. We're just thinking of the sharp 11. What is that? Well, you keep counting past 8, because 8 takes you to the octave. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, which is the octave. Do, 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 do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, and then you just keep going. Because what else can you do? If you're in the scale, you can just play it up an octave. And then you keep counting. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, etc. Yeah? 14, 15. Now, so you saw I went 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's the 11th note of the scale. The 11th note of the scale is the same as the 4th note of the scale, but an octave up. 11, 4 plus 7 is 11, is it not? So 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 7. Why 7? Because it gives you the octave, right? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah? 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 gives you the octave, but you've got 1 accounted for by the note you're already on. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and there we are at the 11th note. Okay. God, I hope that's okay. Basically, I just mean you just count through the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And you just keep counting. So I got to note 11, which happens to be this note. Now it says sharp 11. So I don't just play, you know what sharp means? You take it up 1 semitone. That's the 11th note. This is sharp, sharp 11. So however, that is a bugger to play, and this note, luckily, is B, which is the same as the open B string. So I can do what I can fret it. I can do a shape as I was doing earlier, which is just an F major shape, but instead of barring all the strings, I can move away from the strings, just fret the low E string with the tip of my first finger, and get those open strings. Now, just as a aside, getting both of the open strings sounds very nice. You can move the shape around, keep these 2 open strings ringing as a pedal, and you'll hear that used a lot because it sounds nice and it's easy to do. But in this song, we just want the sharp 11, hence I was saying just strum up to that B string and don't include that E. So that's a lot of time spent on that chord. But that is the most difficult chord because we've pretty much covered everything else. Because look, the next chord is C major 7. Then we've got F7, sharp 11 again, So like I said, I'm just doing F sharp 11, I think it sounds better. But if you want to do F7, remember you've got to take the pinky off, and instead of the 3rd fret D string, you've got to get the 1st fret D string, which is a bit of a bugger to play. And if it was a tune where I really liked that sound, and it really helped the tune, I would go for it. But in this particular song, I think that simpler chord sounds nicer. So F with the sharp 11 rather than F7 sharp 11. Then we got C major 7 again. Then we got that B minor 7 flat 5, which we've covered. And then we got E7, which we know about. Then we got A minor 7. Now we've got C7 over G. Well, easiest way to get this, at least to get yourself used to this chord, is just play normal C7. Then instead of the root here, because we want C7 over G, we're just going to take this finger and take it down, or move it up to the physically down in terms of pitch. Move it to the 3rd fret of the low E string, which gives us the note G. And then we've still got these notes, so that still sounds like, because all this is still a C7. So that is our C7 over G. And the underside of the 3rd finger will mute the A string, because you don't want the open A note in there, because the open A note is not in a C chord. Well, not in this one. So, if you're going to this chord from A minor 7, you still got these 2 as anchor fingers, but instead of doing this for C7, which again I think sounds nicer actually in the context of this song, but you're just gonna, instead of fingers 3 and 4 going to the A string and the G string, it's going to go to the E string and the G string. Breaker, you. Now you got an F major 7. Now you can play an F major 7, as I think we've covered, well, I know we've covered, 2 different ways. Given we're talking jazz chords, I would do this way. Okay, so we've just done this. A minor 7, C7. Are there any anchor fingers? No, unfortunately not. F major 7. What is this chord? This is A minor. I mean, it's the shape of A minor, Well, it is A minor, with an F in the bass. So this is how we usually play A minor with fingers 1, 2 and 3. Instead, rather like, well, exactly like we did for the F sharp minor 7 flat 5, this part of the chord is going to be played with fingers 1, 3 and 4, yeah? No, it's not. Sorry. 3 and 4, that's good, but finger 2 will be used for the B string first fret. In fact, just like you were doing like a B minor, yeah? So when you do a B minor, you're taking the A minor shape up the fretboard. So instead of playing it with fingers 1, 2 and 3, you're playing it with fingers 2, 3 and 4. Yeah, so that you got your first finger free for the bar. Well, in this case, you're playing it with fingers 2, 3 and 4, but you got your first finger free just for that single note on the low E string first fret. And again, this is very typical jazz voicing. Bass note on the E string, or the A string, but in this case the E string, and 3 notes of the chord on the D, G and B strings, yeah? And those are the only notes that you hear, those are the only strings that you play. So if I was picking it, it'd be thumb and 3 fingers, and if I was strumming it, I could still do the same strumming pattern, but that that A string would be muted by the underside of the first finger. I mean, actually, in this case, because it's an F chord, that A fits. But I mean, this is a movable shape, and if you were, say, here at the 3rd fret, making this G major 7 rather than F major 7, you certainly wouldn't want this A note in the chord. You wouldn't want that open A string. So it would get muted by the underside of the first finger. Okay, so that's A minor 7, C7 over G, F major 7, and of course you could play F major 7 like this. Fingers 1, 2, 3, you know that F shape, and then instead of just playing those 3 notes, you have the top E string open. Yeah? Okay, and that gives you F major 7 as well. So, dream maker you heart, or dream maker you heart. I prefer this one in this song. Breaker. It's a B flat 7, which is just horrid. Sorry. It's just unavoidable bar chord time. First finger, and in the worst place, because of course the first fret is the most difficult place to do a bar chord. That's where you need to apply the most pressure. Is there any way out of this? Kind of. Let me show you the typical thing first. First finger frets and bars, 5 strings, and then, well, you know this shape. Finger 3, 3rd fret of the D string. Finger 4, 3rd fret of the B string. So you got that, yeah? Now, that's with my first finger, and notice I'm using my second finger to help my first finger press down, because this is just a bugger of a chord to play. Don't want to spend long on that. And luckily we don't. So, what was I going to say? Yeah, rather than the first finger bar the whole 5 strings, looking like that, you could do what we did earlier. What was it when we were doing the F7 sharp 11, and just have the tip, the last digit of the first finger, the table's in the way. So if my arm looks awkward, it's partly because of that. The tip, the last digit of the first finger is doing that again, barring the A, D and G strings, because this is a way of, well, it's just a way of avoiding having to do a whole bar. If you do it this way, so you just bar those 3, then fingers 3 and 4 go in the same place, but then that top E string isn't covered, so you don't play it. You just stick to those middle 4 strings, yeah? And if you were strumming, doing typical bass strum, and were worried about hitting that string, which would be very easy to do, well, that string gets muted either by the underside of the 4th finger, which is probably the easiest thing, or maybe you'll find that a bit of your first finger is touching that string. For me, it's not. But the underside of the 4th finger, I can get it to mute it. But that is just a difficult chord to play, probably the most difficult chord to play. So not the most complex chord in terms of how many notes. It's a dominant 7 chord, so it's a 4-note chord. But I can feel that. That's a difficult one to play. What we'll be doing instead, we were doing the F minor, weren't we, instead? Now that works for reasons I just won't go into because I can't think of them. Why does that work? Because when we do B flat 7, this is called a secondary dominant. It's not actually in the scale, and neither is, jazz changes key a lot. So we were in C basically, but there's a lot of brief chord changes like C, C major 7, you're in C, A minor 7, you're in C. As soon as you get to F dominant 7, you're no longer in C, because the only dominant 7 in the key of C is G7. So you've changed key within the third bar. At third bar you've already changed key. Now B7 also isn't in the key of C. I'll come back to that. I can't think. B7, B flat 7 is in the key. Okay, that's it, isn't it? It's in the key of C minor, and F minor is in the key of C minor, and so both the chords B flat 7 and F minor are both in the same key, so we can use those as substitutes because they're both taking us out of the key of C, but both into the same key that B flat 7 and F minor are in. And that key is close enough, just close enough to the key of C major to not sound totally discordant and like, what the hell's going on? It's close enough to just give you a tang. It still makes sense to the ear, but it adds excitement because you're not just stuck in, everything's in C major and I'm very used to the sound now. Yeah, it gives you spice. Right. Let's get on to, that was B flat 7. Then you have A minor 7 and A minor 7 over G, which we've tackled. Yeah. Actually, let me put that back up. A minor 7 over G, leading you down to, first finger is a anchor, leading you down to F sharp minor 7 flat 5. B7, we know. E minor 7. Now here we could use A7. Well, you know A7. It's just like A, but without the G string, or with open G string rather than G string second fret. And so it gets played like this with fingers 2 and 3. You can play it any way you want, but fingers 2 and 3 are the usual way of fretting it. And if I'm going from E minor 7, that's pretty comfortable doing that. D minor 7, we've tackled. It's like the F shape, the 4-string F shape, minus the third finger, and it's the open D string because it's a D chord, is your lowest note. And then G7, I would play like that, G7, first fret, second fret, third fret. You could play G7 like this, but why? In this context, because we're on an acoustic guitar, it's more difficult and it doesn't sound as good as the open strings ringing out. So what else have we got? Section 2, A minor 7 again, A minor 7 over G, F sharp minor 7 again, F7 now. And you kind of want to play F7 here, in this register rather than there or there, because you want this movement of the bass. It goes A minor 7, A minor 7 over G, then we've got F sharp in the bass, and we really want to get to that F there. So this is F7. Did I say B flat 7 was the hardest chord? Well, it's a toss-up between this and B flat 7, because F7, I find it more difficult than just a simple F. It's basically because when you take the little finger off the D string, then you really need to press down with that first finger so that you can hear that D string on the first fret. And it is a difficult one to do. Okay, and then we got C major 7, F major 7, C major 7, F major 7, E minor 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, G7, and then there's a C6, which just doesn't sound nice in this voicing. C6, what is C6? Remember what I was saying about counting the numbers of the major scale? So this is the chord C. It is made from notes of C major, the first, third and fifth notes of C major, and Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do, that's C major, or 1, 2, 3, 4, oh, got it wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's the sixth note. 7, 8. Yeah, that's the octave, obviously. There's the sixth note. And what I was doing, I was adding that note, which is the second fret of the G string. I was adding it to C. But because it's a guitar, I can't just play C and get a finger there. So I have to rearrange how I play C. Basically, I play A minor with C in the bass. Yeah. This is a chord. You hear some Beatles songs ending with C6 in this voicing. Now, this voicing I prefer. I don't really like the chord. It kind of fits that 50s, early 60s. That type of pop rock. And what am I doing? Well, you've seen how I voiced it here. This one, you know this is C, right? It's an A bar chord. There's A bar chord taken up to the third fret, so this note is C, so we've got a C major chord here. Now, if I play this line as I always do, with a bar, with the last digit, let me just see that, last digit, good lord, 26 minutes, sorry about that, last digit of my third finger. Now, instead of having my third finger in this shape, so that I'm just trying to bar the D, G and B string and allow the top E string to ring out. Well, I don't want that anymore. I want this finger to also get the top E string so that I've got 5th fret, 5th fret, 5th fret, 5th fret on the top 4 strings, and then just with my first finger, I don't need to do a bar anymore. I can just, I don't need to do a bar. I can just fret the A string, 3rd fret, and I don't need to do a bar with my first finger. So my third finger is doing a bar, and my first finger is just getting that A string on the 3rd fret. So that's C6. I guess it does give it a sense of an ending, doesn't it? A sense of resolution. It's just not one that I like, but you might, so that's fine. And then you can see in brackets it's got D minor 7 and G7, which are leading you back to the C at the beginning of the song, and that's called a 2-5-1. D minor 7, G7, C. Why is it called a 2-5-1? Because in the key of C, those chords are the second chord. C is the first chord, so that's your 1 chord. And this is chords made up from C major scale. C is your 1 chord. D minor is or D minor 7, extension of D minor, is your 2 chord. E minor is your 3 chord. F is your 4 chord. G or G7 is your 5 chord. So we've got 2, 5, and 1. Yeah. D minor, G7, or D minor, G7, and 1. There, C major 7. Or okay, well that did take longer than I thought, but I guess you've got time on your hands. So I hope that's of some interest. I hope that it gives you options. All right, take care. Bye.